Hello everyone, welcome back to our introduction to Maya 2017. This is the second part of our introductory lesson. There's a couple things that I had realized I had forgot to mention. I just kind of presumed everyone knew based off of um, knowledge you may have had working Maya before. But moving your way around the screen, clicking on an object, I just said click on an object. I'm talking about left mouse button clicking on this object. If you hold down right mouse button on an object, you get this floating menu. Those are some things I forgot to mention. This also gives you this right mouse button floating option here. Gives you access to the different component types. You have your edge, um, you have your vertex, which is these corner pieces here. You have your face mode, and then you also have what's called UV mode. It gives you little, they're like kind of like tan dots, and you select them, they turn green. Um, these are what you use to manipulate the surface texture, which we don't really currently have anything. We just have a shader with a color attached to it. But UVs we'll get into at a later lesson. Some other things I feel like I may have skipped over, so we'll just go over those again, is to move your way around the screen. If you hold down Alt and left mouse button, um, you can drag and rotate your screen like so. You can also, while holding down Alt and middle mouse button, you can middle mouse button meaning that scroll wheel. If you push it in, you can move your screen around like this. So let's say I'm scrolled in like this and I want to move it off to the side. You can do one of those. Something I feel like I should mention is if you don't have any kind of middle mouse button action happening like this, you probably have to activate your third button as your mouse wheel. Just go to your settings, go to mouse, activate three button system, and make it to where the middle button is your mouse. Um, what else? Just to scroll inwards to zoom in and out, that is your mouse wheel. So you can go like that, zoom in and out. Okay. Same thing with Alt and right mouse button. So I'm not really sure why they have two different versions of this, but if you hold down Alt and right mouse button, drag left to right, you'll zoom in and out. But you can also do the same thing by just simply zooming with the mouse wheel. Okay, so what else are we going to talk about today? Today we're going to talk about animation and rendering. Those are our two other topics I wanted to cover that I didn't have time to cover last time. And we're going to cover them now, and that will be the conclusion of the introduction to the UI of Maya. So to animate this guy here, you can do it underneath the channel box here. So we have our translate X, Y, and Z over here. So you can translate an individual channel. So I can say, let's say I want to translate in the X. Okay, I'm going to on frame 1 here. So this is your timeline from 1 to 120. This is basically 24 frames per second for what real time is. We're starting on frame 1. So this timeline is saying, so if we go all the way to the end here, we have almost 5 seconds of film. We can make this longer by putting a higher value in. Right now it's set to 120. I can put this all the way up to 200 if I want to, or whatever value I want. But I want to animate along the X. So to do that, I can go right mouse button on top of here and go to key selected. That will add a keyframe over here on frame 1. You can see that this has a new little red slash here. Now, if you want to do it that way, it's a little bit more of a time-consuming pattern because you have to go up to the channel box, the attribute you want selected, or you want animated, and key that attribute over and over again, which can be kind of tedious. There are ways to speed up the workflow on that, but like this auto keyframe toggle button right here, this will make it to where every change I make will be recorded. So I can go ahead and move it over here, and you can see another keyframe popped up. That is a faster way of doing it. Or you can do what we did to begin with and still right mouse button and just rekey it that way as well. The other way, and this is the way I usually animate, the only reason I won't is if I'm having lots of constraints through controllers, which is more of an advanced topic. In my channel box here, sometimes you'll have to lock those or hide them or whatever. But back to my point, which is the faster way of doing it, which is just hitting S for keyframe. That'll keyframe all the channels. See how they all just turned red over here? That tells me that every channel now has a keyframe. So then I can now go over to frame, let's say 20. I'm going to move it over this way, and I'm going to move it up, and I'll hit S. Okay, oops, I forgot to hit S. There we go. So now from frame 1 to frame 20, it smoothly animates straight to that target point. That's called interpolation, where Maya will take your keyframe on frame 1, go to where it was on at frame 20, and it'll fill in the animation between frame 1 and frame 20 for you. So it'll do all the math. That's the power of Maya's animation. So you can sit here and scroll through. You can see now that it animates. Perfect, right? Okay. You don't just have to do translate though. You can also do rotate. So let's go ahead and start again with this one. We'll hit S, and we're going to have this one go up. Okay. And I'm going to have it spin like that. Okay. Hit S, and then I'm going to actually copy the keyframe from frame 1. And I want to put that on frame 30. So I'm going to left mouse button click over on frame 30. Well, actually, you know what? I'm going to go left mouse button click on frame 1, middle mouse button on frame 30. Is what that does is it hops to frame 30 without actually animating forward. You see how everything's still at starting position? So underneath the timeline, we're on frame 30, but as far as the scene is concerned, this is still frame 1. So this is a way of I can copy this particular pose of this box and put it at frame 30. So it's now back at starting position. So now if I scroll forward and go up, it rotates up, and then when it comes back down, it goes back the other way and goes back to its starting position. Okay, pretty cool, right? Let's do one more kind of animation. All right, we're going to do let's do a rotational type animation. I'm going to use something new that I haven't discussed yet, and this is called grouping. Now, if we go inside of our outliner, here is my cube right here, right? And if you look at this cube right here, our manipulator is on the cube, and the reason why it's on the cube is because this is where its center pivot is. Now, if I want to animate it going around this whole area here, it'd be really hard to do so because it pivots on its location. I need to pivot off the center here so it can be an exact circle. So to do that, I need to create an object that's at the center here. So I'm going to create an empty object called a group. So I'll hit Control G. You'll see over here, and look underneath it. Here's my cube. What happened is I had this selected, and I hit Control G, and it automatically takes what is selected and pulls it into the group. Now, if I was outside here, let's see here, before I created that group, go back one more step. I'm hitting Control Z and going back to before the group was created. Come on, one more time. There we go. All right, so if I select over here and hit Control G, it creates this null one, which is the same thing as a group. It just doesn't have anything in it. So I just call this one group block. Okay, and I'm going to take this group here, or this block over here. Now I could have, like I said, just selected this guy and hit Control G, and it would have blocked it in, right? But since I didn't, I actually have to put this inside here. So inside my outliner, I'll just middle mouse button drag this guy. You'll see a little plus sign next to my little pointer, and I'll drag that down into the group block. Okay, so now you see there's a little plus sign on the side of it. That tells me there's a hierarchy going on, which is that the group block is the top, and down inside here's that mesh. Okay, now what did that do for me? Now you see the manipulator still on this one here, right, on this cube. Now if I select the group block, now the manipulator is at the center, which makes it where I can now animate going around this way. Cool. Alright, so on frame 1, I'm going to hit S, that'll keyframe that. And on frame 20, I'm going to do a 360 with this. So I'm going to put in a value of 360 over here. And I'll hit S. Okay, so now over 20 frames, it does a 360, right? Now something you might also be wondering is like, well, what if I made a mistake and this was too close? Can I delete a keyframe? Yes, you can. So if you go over here and you select, hold down Shift, drag over the top of it, you'll get that little red area here. Now, don't make the mistake of hitting delete. If you do, it'll delete the objects associated with that keyframe. So if I hit delete, boom, my object's gone. Don't want that to happen, right? I want my object back. What you want to do is you want to right mouse button on top of this red area, and you'll get an option where it says delete. You have copy and paste as well, which you can copy and paste keyframes in this manner as well. So now I can go and hit delete, and there's my keyframe is gone, right? Now I did want that keyframe there, so I'm gonna go ahead and put that one back. All right, but let's say I want this actually to be moved. Let's hold and shift and drag over the top here. I can middle mouse or left mouse button, click these little yellow arrows right here, and drag them wherever I want. So let's say I want to do it 45 or 50. Okay, so now I can, now it animates that circle, but it does it over a longer period. Perfect, right? Okay. All right, so that pretty much does it for our introduction on animation. Next, I want to talk about doing rendering. Okay. Also, before we go there, let's talk about playback speed, because if you press play right here, it goes really fast, right? And the reason why is because we haven't set our playback speeds yet. So right here on the right side of this auto keyframe thing that I have activated is this little running view with a little gear next to them. That is your animation settings, preferences. So right now our playback speed is set to, play every frame. Max playback speed is free. Now free means that it will play as fast as your processor will let it. So typically this is when you have play every frame with free on. This is mainly made for when you have like physics objects going, because it has to calculate stuff, and you want every frame to be calculated. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn this to 24 frames per second. That'll lock out our free play, and we'll go ahead and hit save. Okay. Now let's go ahead and hit play. Now everything plays a little better, right? Okay, perfect. Go back over here. Okay, so now let's talk about rendering. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to also create myself a ground level, because right now there's no ground, so rendering won't make a ton of sense. It'll just be floating blocks in space. So I'm going to create myself a plane. Let's scale this guy up. Okay, and I'm going to move it down. Good. Okay. I'm also going to create myself a light. Let's go ahead and create myself a basic light. We're going to do a directional light. Directional lights go infinitely in one direction, which is the direction these arrows are pointing. So I'm just going to go ahead and create one of those. And I'm going to tilt it off to the side here. Okay. There we go. Something I'm going to also activate here, inside your viewport you have options for optimizing your viewport. So right now, if I want to turn the lights that I just created on, so those are what I'm going to be looking through, I click this little light bulb looking thing. That is the lights that are in our scene. So now it looks a little bit more realistic, right? Or as far as like how the light's being cast. And you can change the light like I'm doing right now and get a better view of how your light's going to work in your scene. You can also turn on shadows. So if we go over here where there's little shadows being cast right next to the light bulb, now there's shadows being cast onto our cube. Okay, cool. Alright, so that gives me a little bit better of a preview of what I'm going to be looking at when I do render. So now let's actually look at our render settings. So over here, that's light editor, render settings. Here we go. Some new stuff inside of 2017. This is a little different than what it used to be. Okay, it used to be you just get these four here. Now we have this extra one here, which is display and edit connections and chain network. We have this one over here, which is launch render setup window. That's one we just did. And then there's this one here, which is open the light editor, which gives us a little bit more control over light linking and stuff like that to optimize our scene. Okay, so let's look at what we got going on here. We have our common setup, right? All right, so we have our, if you look up over here at the very top here, it says path, and you have C, users, owner, desktop, Maya demo images. So this is where it's going to send our rendered images to. All right, and even above that, let's skip one more up here where it says render using, and then we have Arnold renderer. We also have Maya software, Maya hardware, blah blah blah. We don't do 2.0. Well, Hardware 2.0. I guess that's an upgrade. That was it used to be Maya Software 2.0. Maya Vector. Mainly we render with either Maya Software or Arnold, but we're going to use Maya Software today. Okay, we'll get into the other ones a little bit later on some future projects, but we're going to keep it pretty simple for today. Okay, so this should be a little more familiar to you if you've been working with Maya in the past. So now we have image format. Okay, so we're going with they say Maya IFF, but IFF doesn't really work so well with compositing programs like After Effects. So typically I'd change this to Targa. Targa seems to be more widely accepted, so I have to go down. Here's Targa. Take that one. Okay, next one here says frame animation. Okay, so name.number.extension is what we want. Okay, but right now it says single frame. That means that if I hit render, I'm only going to render this one image. Okay, so let's say I want just this one image. I can leave it alone. But if I want to have an actual animation, then I'll need to go name.number.extension like it is up here, and then frame padding is how many zeros, so how many animations are going to be like. If you look up here at the top, we have one right here where it says file name, scene 1 to frame 10 here, right? But you can see here it goes to the hundreds and thousands positions. So that's what the frame padding is, how many zeros are on this extension. Okay. Right now it's set for 10. Let's say that we wanted to go all the way to 50, right? Okay. Now we're saying which camera do we want to use? Did we create a custom camera? We didn't, so we only have our perspective or we have our orthographics. We're going to stay with perspective for right now. Now our presets. What screen resolution are we using? I almost always say just go 1080. Sometimes you're working with something where you don't need 1080, but that's what I default to usually. Okay. Maya Software. Right now it's set to qualities at custom. You can do preview quality, intermediate quality, production quality. It'll go through and manually set all these things for you. Let's do preview quality for now, and we'll go medium quality, and let's do underneath ray tracing quality. Make sure this is activated or you won't have any shadows. So that's activated, so that should be good. Okay. Alright, so from here our render settings are all set up. Now is all we have to do is render. So we're going to go to our menu sets where we've been underneath modeling for now because that's where all of our modeling tools are. Now we're going to go over to rendering. Okay, and underneath rendering there's a tab that says renderer. Okay, so now this is pretty straightforward. There's just a one button click here. Now if you're working with a PC and not a Mac, you usually have this option here where you can do use all available processors, or you can uncheck this and pick how many processors you want to use. I have 8 cores, so usually I will, depending on what I'm doing, I might pare it down to like 6 cores or 4 cores so that I can work on other things while this is doing its rendering. If you're just planning on going to sleep for the night, just go ahead and hit use all available processors and close. So just do batch render and close. It'll ask you if I'm sure the student copy is going to save. Yeah, go ahead and do that. And then if I was going to sleep, I just go ahead and walk away from my computer. Now, on a simple project like I'm working on with you guys right now, this will go really quickly. Now, if you're working on a more complex project, these renders could take anywhere from 3 minutes to an hour or longer, depending on how complex your scene is, and how fast your computer is. So you'll see down here right now it's getting ready to start rendering. This is rendering with Maya Software, and it will start to get like a status bar that'll scroll through here, and once it does, it'll start to kind of hammer out all these rendered images for us really quickly. But if you're working with a more complex scene, like I said, this can take a really, really long time. So I'm not going to really sit through this entire process of letting it render out. But when you're done, you'll find that, let's see here, I'm looking for my project folder that I created. Let's see here, where did I save that? I thought I saved it right. That's my demo. There we go. When you're done rendering, you'll see here that there is this images folder, and here's already rendered off the first one. Now it's rendering out the rest of them, and it's dumping all those images into the images folder of your project folder. This is the reason why we use project folders, is because it helps us organize our scene. And you can see how fast it's rendering these out. It's not going to take a really long time for these ones since it's just 3 blocks inside of a scene. We're 5 images in, but at 24 frames per second, if you have a 5-6 minute scene, this could take a really long time. And this is going really quickly. Now, if you have a 6-minute scene and each one takes 3 minutes to an hour to render, then you're looking at like, days, weeks, months for rendering time. So all things to keep in consideration while you guys are rendering. Okay, so I'm not going to sit through and let it render all 50 frames. You could just go ahead and do a little double click here and have it open up. It'll probably open up Photoshop, I imagine. Let's see here. Maybe I can actually navigate to. Yeah, I don't know. Let's see here. I'm going to try to map this up in Photoshop. I was going to say I was about to navigate to After Effects, but I'll just go ahead and let Photoshop take over. Just give it 1 second here, guys. Inside of Maya, they give you a program called FCheck. So if you go to Applications, it'll open a piece of software that will play through your animation. So here's 1 frame of my animation. So that's what that looks like in the scene currently. Something else we might want to look at. Let's say I decide after the fact that my lighting isn't bright enough. Okay, so you can always go to Renderer and go to Cancel Batch Renderer, and it'll cancel that. You see the little scroll bar going down there. It's still spinning off the processes. So yes, go ahead and cancel that last render job. So it goes ahead and cancels it for us. And then I can make my adjustments and then go back to settings, find out what the last frame was, and say, okay, this time instead of starting on frame 1, go to start on frame 20 or wherever it left off at, and then start your batch render again. Or if you want to completely re-render, just go ahead, delete all the last images, and re-render. You could also, and this is what I should have done before we even started doing our batch render, you can test out your batch renders to see what your scene's going to look like by clicking this little icon right here. This will give you a batch render of your scene as is through the current camera. Okay, so there it is. That's what it should render looking like. That last one looked a little bit dark to me, but this is what it's currently looking like. Okay, so that's it in a nutshell. That is the conclusion to the second part of the UI overview. There's lots more inside of Maya. You can't nutshell Maya really. The best way to work your way through Maya is by doing projects. Then you kind of get to get your fingers in every single aspect of Maya. So that being said, the conclusion of the introduction is over. My next project is going to be the Solar System project, also inside the introduction book to Maya through Cybex. I'm going to walk you guys through that project one step at a time. So if you guys like what you've seen so far and you want to continue down the path, follow me into my next project, which will be the Solar System project in Maya 2017. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.